Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Peace Studies for Sustainable Development in Africa, where we discuss pertinent issues of peace and sustainability around the world and across Africa. Our theme today is on common good dynamics and peace. What is this common good? To help us discuss this question is our speaker today, Professor Matthias Nebel, from UPAEP in Mexico. UPAEP stands for Universidad Popular Autónoma del Estado de Puebla, or in English, Popular Autonomous University of the State of Puebla. Matthias Nebel is Professor of Christian Social Ethics and Director of a research center dedicated to the common good at UPAEP. He has taught and worked in Cambridge, Paris, Geneva, and other places. Please join us in welcoming Professor Matthias Nebel. It's a pleasure having you, brother, and nice to see you again. So please, you may start your presentation. You'd like to say maybe a little bit more about yourself. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, George. It's a pleasure to be here tomorrow. It's very early here in Mexico, so I'm sorry I came a little bit late because of traffic jam. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm Swiss, so whenever I'm late 5 minutes to a place, I feel very bad, very bad. So, first, welcome to all the people who join this network of conference on peace studies and peace studies applied to Africa. Myself, I'm not an expert in peace studies, but I've worked a lot on the notion of the common good in the last 10 years. And basically, what I'll propose is to understand the interaction between those two elements. When I say that I'm not an expert in peace studies, however, I've been at the UN for 5 years, and during the Syrian crisis. So I know something about peace and peace building and peace efforts and the difficulties of the same. So let me start. I'll propose, as title of this conference, the construction of peace as a common. Restating the notion of Elinor Ostrom, the commons, and I propose to understand that peace can be constructed and should be constructed as a common. I have a short introduction, then a first part where I precisely propose to understand peace as a common, and then a second part, a little bit more technical, where I present peace as a systemic outcome of a nexus of basic common goods. So this will be the second part and a very short conclusion. Let me begin with the introduction. My first point is that peace studies or peace building programs have raised obviously the very important question of how we operate a transition from an open conflict or a high-level situation of violence toward a peaceful coexistence. And obviously, the need of this sort of knowledge is flagrant. Whenever you think about the different drama brought by war, civil war, in the case of genocide, in the case of Burundi, Rwanda, actually Sudan, South Sudan, Chad, Nigeria, and all those conflict or almost conflict or conflict of low intensities. It's a very valuable knowledge. It's a very important field of knowledge, and obviously don't understand me wrong, it's very important and we have achieved great things. However, and this is my second point in the introduction, we must also acknowledge the limited successes of peace-building programs. More often than not, they are met with failure, or at least mixed results. Or we seem to have a better capacity to freeze conflict than to resolve conflict and to build peace. So in terms of negative peace, the absence of violence, we seem to have been able to do great things, and we have successes. But then in the positive field of peace, positive peace building, this has been obviously much more difficult. This points actually, in my opinion, toward two elements. First, an incomplete knowledge. That is, it's a recent field of study, so something is missing. Why are we not met with success? Probably because we miss something in the way we understand those phenomena. And also probably because of the very shortcomings of such a knowledge. There is no knowledge without some sort of presupposition, and peace studies knowledge has some preconceptions. In this conference, that one of those gaps between theory and practice is about the nature of peace and the forging of a collective will for peace. And I think this might be precisely what I will apport to this peace studies network. As for the shortcomings of the knowledge, I will just point out to the background of many, if not most, peace-building programs, namely the social contract theories. You well know that Hobbes, for example, postulate conflict has the state of nature. Is conflict really the state of nature or not? I'm not convinced. I think this is a very cheap, presupposition to peace-building programs. And you may think, no, that's not the case, but most of the elements you use when using peace-building programs are based on social contract theories. Another presupposition of social contract theories is that Hobbes postulate, for example, that fear is the driver that motivates the surrender of individuals to the state's tyranny, in exchange, obviously, for a set of fundamental rights and duties equally granted among the whole population. But those two elements are very disturbing. Do we really think that left to themselves people are violent in nature, that is, ontologically, and that only fear can bring about people to agree to a social contract? And if this is the case, are the presupposition of the instrument you use, then I'm sorry to say you're certainly bound to fail. The aim of the present conference is to propose, as I've said, an understanding of peace as a common, moreover, a meta-common good. I'll explain the difference in a moment. And to identify the normative drivers lasting peace-building process. These are the two objectives of this conference. So let's start with the first part, peace has a common. My first point is a very short reminder of the historical concept of two historical conceptions of peace as a common. First, I'm obviously from Europe. Allow me to refer to the Pax Romana, the Pax Romana of the Roman Empire. The Romans have this very pragmatical, very cynical understanding of peace as a common, that peace actually follows victory. For the Roman, there is no other form of peace. You have to be first a victor to then have peace. No? It is the outcome of peace, is the outcome of a lasting victory. But the Roman Empire is not that brutal either. No? Peace is also understood as the outcome of a lasting social order, and especially a legal order. That's the dual tradition of the Roman Empire. The Roman law progressively extended first to the whole citizenship of Italy, and then progressively the second century after Christ to the whole, well, not the whole, most of the population of the empire. Yeah? So Roman law and victory are the basis of what they call peace, and peace is an utilitatis communio. That is something which is useful to create a community. Yeah? So it's the usefulness of peace to create a community that allows the Roman law to understand peace as a common. Yeah? This I'll call this is the ad minima conception of peace. No? The usefulness of peace has a medium to create a community. And obviously we can still learn from it. No? Victory, social order, and therefore peace. The second historical case I wanted to present is an ad maxima, conception of peace. And it can be found in the frescoes that you find on the Palace of Governance, the Governance Palace of Siena. It's Lorenzetti's frescoes of the common good. Here you have a magnificent depiction of the common good. You have a roof that falls down the sky and goes through the hands of justice. No, well, it falls down the skies and comes to the hand of justice. It goes through the hand that is the right hand, that gives justice to the good people. Then it is given to man through another figures, feminine figures that stands for the Concordia. Then it is in the hand of a whole series of people, man and woman, that represent actually the government of Siena, that take the same rope. No, they push to the same rope, and then it goes up, and it finished. No, with the common good, a king, which is the common good, and several virtues on the side of the common good. No? Lorenzetti's understanding is that peace stems from a concordia cordis, that is from concordia, concords of the hearth, no? In the pursuit of the common good as the goal of the government. Peace is not here linked to victory or a specific social order or legal order, but to the right practice of governance, a practice of governance looking for the common good so that each and everyone is carried by the government. It is not something, peace is therefore not something that is sought directly for itself, but it is the happy outcome of something else, and it is a social habit. This peace is not so much something you seek, but something that happens because you seek common good. You know? And as such, It is not something that can be pinned down to some aspects, but it is a social habit, a collective practice, in the sense given to this notion by Bourdieu, for example, social habits. No? Obviously, we are here confronted with some sort of dichotomy. Are we rather on the side of the Romans, or are we rather on the sides of Lorenzetti's understanding of peace? Are we rather on the ad minima conception of peace, or are we rather on the ad maxima conception of peace? Can we solve this dichotomy? This is my second point, solving the dichotomy, common has an organized interaction. Let me very briefly remind you of two ways to understand power. Machiavelli understand power as the capacity of somebody to be obeyed by another. It's the asymmetry of will and the submission of someone's will to the will of another person. It's the conception of power as an imposition. Power is verified whenever a person really obeys. And it's obviously Max Weber's question, who commands and who obeys, and this is the definition of power. Against this definition of power, you have the definition given by Arendt, in part also by Foucault, where power is the ability to cooperate to achieve something different. It's not the question of who commands and who obeys, but it's our shared capacity to do something different, to do something. That's the capacity to cooperate. Between those two, and this is a very important question, which is the more fundamental with which you work? Is it rather Max Weber, or is it rather Hannah Arendt's conception of power with which you work? It's not a philosophical question, and it's not an easy resolved question. It's not, oh, it's both at the same time. No, it can't actually. Which of the two is the preconception, the precondition to the others? Do you think that cooperation results because of the conflictive nature of power, or do you think that cooperation is conflictive but can be resolved? Which comes first, imposition or cooperation, and how the other is involved in the first one? I can tell you that whenever you program a peace building intervention, the question is actually extremely important, because you won't build your intervention the same way if you believe the first or the second. Ostrom, Elinor Ostrom, a Nobel Prize of Economy in 2009, proposed to understand commons out of the second tradition of thought, that is, power has stemming from our capacity to cooperate. And she does so on an empirical ground. Her studies of the existence of common pool resources is linked to the recognition that in many different places of the world, people without fear, without obligation, actually come up and cooperate to create a collective will to handle together a common pool resource, be it a fishery, be it fields, be it bridges, water system, etc., etc. Conflict exists, obviously, and Ostrom is well aware of it, and asymmetries of power have to be dealt with, but they are second to our ability to cooperate. They're so that in her rules of governance of commons, you have precisely rules that tackles the possibility of conflict, introducing, for example, the people who are in a situation of exclusion, to make the voice of everybody heard in governance mechanism. Those are ways in which conflict is reduced and preempted in the governance mechanism proposed by Ostrom's. And obviously, on that ground, Ostrom will propose that common exist as the outcome of organized interactions. That is, they exist out of our capability to organize and to create institution that gives to interaction a stable form of creating and maintaining social goods. I'll argue that peace can be understood as a common, something that exists as the outcome of an organized interaction. It is nothing obviously very new, but I'll stress here elements which make it perhaps interesting. First, peace is an outcome. It's something that comes as a result interaction. So we should be putting focus on the quality of the interaction in order to have access to the results. If peace is a result, then the way, the quality of the process is of utmost importance. And second, peace is a shared and sustaining social order and sustaining social practice, structuring our conviviality. And this is a little bit more complex. Remember Anthony Giddens, and his the new institutionalist, the way in which institutions cannot be just grasped as a structure of commands. Who is in charge and who is meant to do what, but actually institution has creating a social order that can be best described by the social practices it allows. A school, for example, is it best described, or a school, a university, is it best described by telling who is the rector, who are the deans, who are the professor, or is it best described as the educating practice created by this institution? Giddens answers by the practice, because the hierarchy tells us how it functions, but not what it does. And the doing is precisely of utmost interest. So peace is about practice. Peace is about social practice, not individual practice. The social practice created by the institutional framework of an organized interaction. How do you measure practice, and especially social practice? It's a complex question. I'll just mention one term, standard expectation of behaviors. Standard expectation of behaviors. Whenever you are in a social context, you project on others how they should, in this context, under this set of rationality, how they should behave. How they should behave given the institutional framework. I expect my students not to eat in class. I expect them not to hear music, and to give their attention to what I'm saying. it's exactly that. I don't have to oblige them to take a pistol for them to ask for their attention. They know that they have to pay attention to their professor. That is a standard expectation of behavior. Peace can be measured, has a standard expectation of behavior. Do I expect a person coming toward me in the road in Mexico to be peaceful toward me, or should I expect him to have a pistol and to eventually kill me? I must say, in Mexico nowadays, I know perfectly well when I can go out without fear, and whenever I'm in a dangerous situation. Going out after midnight in some part of the city, it's really risking my life. It would be risking my life. Right. So that's my second point. What are the first point? What two way to understand powers? No, that's my first point of understanding the how to map. Sorry. First one was the historical conception of peace as a common, then solving the dichotomy common has organized interaction. My third point is about understanding organized interaction. Without coming or delving much in complexity, any organized interaction has two main elements. The first, an element that is not well understood, is the need, whenever you organize an interaction, is to create a common will and a shared goal. That is, if you want to do something with other persons, you need to know what you want to achieve, and you need to create a common will. These two elements are of utmost complexity. And when we speak of peace as the result of an organized interaction, then obviously the meaning of peace, do we want peace together, is a key question. And obviously, this is the first field, first element of organized interaction. The second is the different rules, the roles, the limits of the organized interaction, the governance mechanism, the conflict resolution mechanism, etc., that organize our interaction so that we create by our organized interaction a shared rationality typical to the way in which we collaborate. Obviously, a rationality that commands the way in which my specific role in an organization will be carried out. Applying this framework of understanding of institutions, and organized interaction to peace to peace studies, it seems to me that it raised two fundamental questions. The first is, how do we create and craft a will for peace? How do we create a will for peace? It's very difficult, and I'll say a lot more about it. The second question is, how do we organize our interaction so that it produces effectively peace? Which is obviously also very important. The second question is well covered by peace studies. The first, however, is the stumbling block of peace-building process, in my perception. We are frequently powerless in tackling violent actors or parties, and we are helpless to get them to agree to a peace process initiative. We are helpless to impose to them to renounce the use of violence. This helplessness, this powerlessness to impose a peace process to the violent actors, the war-mongering parties, is a very old conundrum of diplomacy. To dialogue and bridge the difference, to reach agreements, more often than not fails, on the ground of the refusal of one or several actors to renounce their interest, claims, or even their power. That's something very frequent, no? In peace-building initiative, we stumble because people don't want peace, or at least one actor, and it's enough with one actor, do not want peace. And this is precisely the limits, of peace-building process. You can't impose peace to quarreling parties unless, as the Roman, you're prepared to reach yourself for force, violence, and defeat them. That's obviously war. And even then, it will pure peace. The Pax Romana is only the pax of the Roman Empire. It's never the peace of the people who have been subdued, obviously, to the Roman Empire. It's the victory peace. So this is the limit, obviously, of peace building. It's very, very important. Let me propose, from a common good perspective, what can be said on this creation of a will for peace. It is usually very hard to enter, in my experience, to enter into dialogue between different belligerents or people wrapped up in violence, because it's difficult for them to renounce to violence for a very simple reason. What they are, the situation in which they are, is actually marked by violence, and their very existence is defined by it. When you're defined by violence, be it because you resist a violent oppressor, violence becomes part of your own identity. So it's very, very difficult to renounce it. How can you break this identity linked to violence? And this means to understand what we propose to them when we propose peace. If peace is just to renounce violence, it won't appeal to them. So we have to propose peace as something different. What is peace, or how could we, from a common good perspective, propose peace? Peace, I would argue, is something very practical, has a result, an outcome. Peace is the possibility to marry, to have children, to send them to school, to plug the earth for the living, or to start a business, and on due time to grow old and be buried among the family and friends. The wish for peace is, I believe, a wish for a stability of time, undisrupted by violence and uncertainty. The wish for peace is a wish for a stability of time, undisrupted by violence and uncertainty. A capability to think of myself, my children, and to have a life in which I can hope to be buried among the people I've loved in old age. Which means that the outcome for which we have to look when we look for peace is a certain quality of time that stem from an institutional framework. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit complex, but remember this: time is a social construct. Obviously, I'm not speaking here of the time of our clock, no, not the cosmological time, but time has a social construct. Time doesn't exist among us just as a cosmological reality. It exists as a structured reality. Think of bank, no? Bank give credits to people for a certain amount of time, 5 years, 10 years. It depends of the country. It depends, bank says, of the risk, the different situation. In Switzerland, my home country, they give you a loan for 100 years. That's because of the stability of the country. In Mexico, they give you loans for 10 years, and they even think that's too much. You know? And obviously, in a civil war, they don't give you loan because precisely there is no stability of time. Time, the stability, the quality of social time is of utmost importance. And when we speak of peace, I think that we speak of the wish for a stability of time. That is a quality, the quality of the time created among us. So that when we dialogue, when we dialogue with actors involved in a conflict in order to create a will for peace, we should not be so much inspired by business negotiation models or international diplomacy model of negotiation. I don't think that this is the way to go. And here I know that I probably will encounter some resistance, no? I suggest that the dialogue to create a will for peace should be about what each actor wants on the long term for the one they love. What each actor wants on the long term for the people they love, on what they want actually for their children. This is extremely important. If the point we discuss is not the end of the conflict, it's not negotiation of different interests, it's not about arms, and who has more and who has less, and who will give up arms and who will give up violence. This will come in due time, but it's not the starting point of the discussion. The starting point of the discussion should be, I suggest, what they want to leave to the people they love. What they want for the people they love on the long term. This, in my opinion, in my experience too, is the root of commonality. It's the root of commonality, the root of consensus building, because most people wishes the same things for the people they love. And even your most entrenched enemy actually understands that you may love your children and great-grandchildren. So I suggest, I know it's quite controversial, that peace dialogue, to create a common will for peace, should not be based on bargain of interest, concessions, losses made by each actors, but in order to be sustainable, an agreement should be gained on the quality of time that allows the one we love to live together in peace. That is, the possibility to live together, but for our children, not for us. In my experience, this is very effective. If you dialogue on this ground, it's very effective because the long term creates, put into parentheses, the immediate interest of the different warmongering parties. First point, that's very useful. Second point, focusing on the one we love, create a commoning between the different parties, and they can agree on what they want, not for themselves, but for the next generation or the next generation. However, there is obviously, how much time do I have?
About 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, I'll go a little bit.
And make areas redone. So the president will be free to fly around the area there, view that.
I'm sorry, somebody is speaking at the same time. Right. Okay. So I said that we should that what we want when we want peace, no, is the predictability and stability of social time created by the institutional framework of a country. So this means basically that the peace is not the outcome of a single organized interaction, but rather of an institutional framework of a country, of a society. By institutional framework, I mean a system, no, of institution. Peace is therefore not a single common good that stems out of a single organized interaction, but out of an institutional framework. Peace is a systemic outcome rather than a simple outcome. And obviously, the question is there, what quality of time the institutional framework creates as such. And to understand this, I'll suggest, and it's my second part, to understand what an institutional framework of institution might be. And it's my second point. Peace has the outcome of a system of common goods. I propose in other writings, and I can share obviously part of those writings with people who would have an interest. I suggest to understand a society not as the result of an aggregation of individual rationalities, which is the social contract theories, basic understanding of a society, but understanding society as a system of basic common goods. That is, a system of organized interactions. If you see a society has a system of organized interactions, that is, a system of basic common goods, then you have two questions, classical to all people who works with systems, social system. The first question is about the integration of the different basic common goods. Do the different basic common goods, are they coherent between themselves? Coherent mean, are there the different rationality of each basic common good, are there compatible in rationalities or not? Take, for example, in Mexico, the rule of law and the labor market. More than 60% of the labor market is informal, by which we mean that the labor market actually is not is not paying taxes, is not regulated by the rule of law. So that there is no contract, there is no social security for the whole informal labor market. So you have two basic common goods, labor on one hand and the rule of law on the other, but the rationality is not very compatible. You have contradictory rationality in those two basic common goods, which obviously provoke inefficiency, which is the second element of integration. Whereas more efficient as each common good is, then more integrated is usually the system of basic common good. Obviously, there is another very broad statement, whereas more integrated system of basic common good is, the more peaceful it is. And whenever the system of basic common good is less integrated, whenever you have more tension between the basic common goods, then you have more violence in terms of inefficiency, instability, injustice, etc., etc. So this is the first element. No? A system, society has a system of basic common good, integrates and disintegrates. And the question is, which are the drivers that create integration or disintegration? What is of interest for this conference is that whenever you integrate, you have usually more peace, and whenever you disintegrate, you have more violent society. Mexico is a very violent society because of this disintegration. And obviously in Africa, you have very many other many other examples of disintegrating society. It's a process. That's important. However, it's not enough, no? Because you can have a very integrating society, but integrating for the bad, no? Integrating not for the common good, but actually for a common bad. It can be obviously totalitarian regime, as the Nazi regime. You could be also a functional society, but a society that is bring to function better by sheer force, society of slave, no? Would be very integrated, but at the same time extremely violent. So we need another question, not only part interest in the way in which it integrates, but also in the way in the overall direction to which the whole system, social system, move. And this overall direction, in the way I've formalized it in a common good approach to development, is a more human coexistence, no? Revealed by standard expectation of behavior. Among those standard expectation of behavior, well, there is peace, no, obviously. Now, the big question, this is obviously interesting, but I'll skip very shortly above it because my interest lays elsewhere. The big question about society has a system of basic common good is, which are the drivers, you know, that creates an integration, and an integration that leads to a more human conviviality. And we have identified 5 normative drivers. By normative driver, I remember you, normative driver are elements, condition, sine qua non condition, moral conditions, without which a social system disintegrates and move toward creating a bad society. No? The first of these is agency freedom, no? Collective agency freedom. If you don't have collective agency freedom in the sense given to the term by Amartya Sen, Martin Nussbaum regarding agency, collective agency given by Solava Ibrahim, for example, or Denelin, Séverine Denelin for another, or Ingrid Reubens, well, different authors that think about collective agency. Agency is about a very basic freedom. It's about the possibility we have to resolve our problems together. You know? Do we have this capability or not? Without it, a social system decays because it has lost the engine of change. This is the first normative driver. The 3 other drivers that have to do with the way in which an institution is organized, a social system is organized, well, are governance and an efficient governance of the basic common goods and the system as such. The second is justice, that is a just distribution of the different basic common goods. And the third is stability. stability of the different basic common goods in the system and then of the system in itself. The fifth normative driver is humanity. No? That is standard expectation of behaviors that are thought as the outcome, the systemic outcome of the system of basic common goods. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them at the end of the conference. No? The point is that this framework allows us to understand that stability, that is the quality of time created by a social system, is and has to do with the existence of a set of basic common goods. And that in order to have it created, the basic set of the set of basic common goods should be equally distributed, should be efficiently governed, should preserve our collective freedom, and should lead to some sort of collective practice, and a set of collective practice. This actually is very helpful because it helps us understand sets of priorities. I'm sorry, I will skip my last pages of the conference. This is important because it will allow us to set priorities in peace-building initiative. Where do you begin when you plan a peace-building initiative? Answering my second question, how do we plan? How do we organize an efficient will to peace? Well, you will have to focus on creating quality of time. And this is the end result of your initiative. You should think about basic common goods and how to organize them in an efficient way and obviously in a just way without destroying freedom and creating precisely peaceful practice, standard expectation of behavior, knowing that standard expectation of behaviors are collective outcome and that you don't go directly from them, you expect them as the result of something different. So my conclusion were very simple. A common good approach to peace does not solve all the riddles and problems of peace building, but it helps understand the challenges of building peace process. The nature of peace has the quality of social time, the way in which to create a will to peace, focusing on the commonality of the long-term future for the ones we love, and a certain understanding of what the priorities are in creating peace-building processes. Thank you so much. And sorry if I wasn't very clear at some moments. I rushed a little bit.
Thank you so much, Matthias. This has been a wonderful presentation. You are very clear. I could follow your presentation very well. And well, I can see that somebody has raised his hand. So, of course, as usual, we're going to ask questions. So the theme has been common good dynamics and peace, and that peace is a common good. And I like that. And you also said that you will talk about this meta, let's say, common good. And maybe you can talk about it a little bit more. But first of all, let's listen to Dasu. Dasu, you are welcome for your question or comment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. George Mutalema. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello.
I can.
Very well.
Okay, and secondly, thank you very much, Professor Matthias, for your brilliant presentation. And I have to acknowledge that when you are presenting, I was being forced to think very hard and figure out the practicality of some of the issues you have just highlighted. Now, I have two questions for you. The first one, I would like to hear your comments. How do we address a situation, for example, when there is the so-called cupidity of some nations. I'm talking about powerful nations that choose to subjugate other nations for the sake of plundering their natural resources. And here I'm referring to the situation like in Syria, in Ukraine, and Arabia. So how do we go about with the practical points of someone is making noise? What is that? Is that question clear to you, Professor?
Somebody has the microphone on.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, right.
George, if you make me the host, I can take care of that.
Okay,
Okay.
right.
Is my question clear,
That's
Professor?
I'll answer your question. No, well, obviously.
Let me go to the second question.
Okay, that was
Let
the
me
first
go to
question.
the
Okay, right.
Yeah. You in your presentation, you have also hinted that we cannot impose peace to quarreling parties. Either one of the actors is not willing to have peace. So I was trying to relate to what is happening in the Middle East regarding Israel and the other players. So I would like to know what do you think is the practical way of addressing this? Should we subscribe to the notion of the Roman Empire that the defeated party, once the other actor has been defeated, that's when we have peace, or we can have another practical way to resolve the problem? I'm saying so because I've even seen even the United Nations is silent and it's not. And I was trying to figure out probably that's the way the UN has adopted that to let's the defeated one, then the war will end after one part has been defeated. Should we go? In which direction should we go, especially in a practical way to end the situation like in the Middle East? Thank you.
You ask a complex question, and I'm not sure I'm the best if I'm able now to answer. Basically, I can say something about the first and the second. No, knowing that probably in the people hearing us may have better answer than my answers. First, the cupidity of nation. No, this is a very old history. No, powerful nation plunder a weak nation and frequently are even able to create some sort of legality to this plundering. Empire were nothing else than what they were plundering techniques of rich and powerful nation over the world. How do you stop them? How do you come into some peace building process when you have a powerful and a weak person? That's the problem, precisely. And this applies also to the second part of your question. Either you think that peace is precisely something that stems out of cooperation and where we need to cooperate, in which case you will never renounce, even in adverse situation, the will to enter into some sort of dialogue. This is the conviction of diplomats. It is always worth a try, at least. But obviously, diplomats knows that there is a limit. Unbridgeable differences, the will of the powerful to impose its will and to go for what he wants, whatever the cost. And there, the grasp, you have to admit some sort of necessity of force, either to stop the powerful or stop the bad actor to get what he wants. It's self-defense and the legitimacy of self-defense, etc., etc. However, it always means some sort of use of force, frequently war, and war itself creates more war. Once you're engaged in the spiral of violence, it's very, very difficult to get out of it. And it's extremely difficult to break the practice of war, that is the practice of violence. once it has become embedded in a country, a culture, how do you get out of it? How do you come back toward the peace? Yeah? So basically, there is no answer. I think the that cooperation comes first, and that power is not defined first has a capacity to impose my will to another, but comes rather out of our capacity to cooperate. And peace is the outcome of this capacity to cooperate. On the long term, violence cannot survive forever. It needs at a certain point to shift back toward peace-building process, toward cooperation, because sheer violence actually creates slave societies, and slave societies are not very stable and certainly not human. Yeah? Now, for the Middle East, well, I don't know actually. No, the Hamas took an option for when it triggered, you know, this mass murdering raid in Israel, knowing fully well probably that Israel would be bound to react and react obviously violently. They have opted both. They wouldn't say that Israel is innocent of anything and Hamas is innocent. Both have made an option for the worst. They have gone for violence because both actors actually precisely have built their identity on violence. Yeah. The Hamas can't renounce to be against Israel because it is what it is. And Israel needs the confrontation with the Arab states to assess its own identity. They have built their identity around violence, around an antagonism. And this is so, obviously, this is a situation in which the only outcome is war. The only thing they can see is war. Like the saying, you know, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a how do you call it? A nail. Nail. Everything's like, well, Israel see its surrounding situation as a nail because it is a hammer, and the Hamas is in the same situation. I'm very pessimistic, and I don't see a peace-building process being implemented in this region in the coming years, no, at least. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for this reflection, Matthias. And another question from the floor. Evelyn, would you like to go next? And then we go to Richard. Thank you so much, Evelyn. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. I would really like to commend Matthias. I came in late, but I have read some of your articles, and I think it's a really interesting way of presenting it. And the reason I would like to commend you is I believe in your answer, you actually demonstrated the power of your theory, because you did not fall into the easy route of blaming and shaming. You were consistent with your argument of what is the common good, and in the process you did not wear rose-tinted glasses and again fall into the trap of the villain and the victim. So my initial question was actually going to be, can you give a specific example of how one might diffuse a situation through the common good? And you just gave us one, because the question was actually one that could have led to a very different kind of answer.
Good, no problem.
So thank you very much. I'm not sure there's a question in there. Well, I guess my question would be, I'm sure you've had many of these conversations, and I would be interested where you have in fact applied the common good to current situations in answer to such questions.
Well, thank you so much, Evelyn. I'm well very happy if it helps. You know, my idea is to bring something to the debate, and I'm very happy that you think it might add something up to the peace studies, building. You know. Yes, obviously in Mexico we have applied it. You know, this common good approach, we have applied it precisely to several realities. You know, we have out of the approach we have created metrics. You know, and to measure, as you well know, is a way to understand reality and obviously to give to deciders the possibility to act differently. So we have applied the metrics of common good dynamics to several municipalities, you know? And it's very interesting, but because what you get is obviously data, and the data highlights actually elements of social processes that are either positive, either negative, that is either social processes that triggers common good dynamics or triggers common bad dynamics. Yeah? And through it, we can propose, you know, to municipalities very specific public policies that helps break down and stop negative trends and build strength into the positive strengths, positive social processes. I should go into very much more details to explain what those social policies are, but nonetheless, that's something we've done. Another things we've done is to the state of Puebla, where the university is, you know, have asked us to create a road to peace. You know? We have per month, I think, more than 1,000 violent homicides in a population of 4 million persons. You know, here in Puebla, just the state of Puebla, not the state of Mexico, the sub-state. So it's enormous. You know, it's a very violent reality, and they. We propose the road to peace on the basic framework of how to trigger common good dynamics. And well, it wasn't applied because the governor changed, but the exercise was done. That's what we've done for the moment. We have also applied the metric, the approach to family, and especially to family violence, you know? Prevention of family violence, and those are different things we have done. I obviously am very happy to share more of the outcomes of those different initiatives with you, if you wish it, obviously, Evelyn.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. You're welcome.
Oh, okay. I'm also blessed with this, Mr. Matthias. Yes, it's indeed that we are truly with peace steady globally. But let's see this. If people can live with conflict and be satisfied, then what term can we give to their satisfaction? Is it peace?
Sorry, you are breaking, Richard,
violent,
so it's a bit difficult.
Oh, sorry. Is it okay?
Yes, please just try again.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Is it okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Please, if people can live with conflict and be satisfied, what time can we give to this situation? Is it, are they living in a peaceful environment? And then if people interact with respect to each other without conflict, what term can we also give to this situation? Is it a peaceful, what is it, existing, a peaceful relationship? So does it mean that peace has definition and two different applications when we want people to? Please, am I clear with my question?
I hope I understood
Hello?
you well, Richard, because the
Yes,
communication
please.
is breaking a little bit, so I'm not sure I've grasped the whole
Okay, then
the whole length of the whole length of your question, but I think I've understood some part of it at least.
Okay.
Okay, so there are people who live happily with conflicts. Yes, but these are the person privileged, no, by the conflict. If you look a little bit beyond, no, these privileged people who are happy to live within conflicts, you find that some people will always, no, bear the brunt or the negative side of this conflict. There are people excluded, and that obviously fear the violence of the person that is in power. Usually the people who are happy to live in conflict are usually the people who take an advantage out of it. So, for example, during the civil war in Syria, no, you had some part of the population that was happily living the conflict. No? Indeed, the fighters were convinced of the necessity to have this conflict, to engage in this conflict. But ask the women, ask the children, ask the people who suffer the consequences of the conflict, and ask precisely the whole population, even the fighters. Could they have imagined, you know, what I've called this quality of time, the capacity to marry, to have children, to send them to school, to have a regular activity that brings a living, you know, to the family? Can they happily think of being buried somewhere among friends and colleagues, and not to have all of the time their life interrupted? Conflicts, but look for the people who are excluded, no? The people who suffer the violence, and you will very quickly see that this situation is not peaceful. No? The second part of your question I didn't grasp fully well, Richard. I'm sorry. It was about another situation.
Yes, I said you've really dealt with the first one, and the second one was if people interact in a serene manner to develop a common good for all. Is it also termed as peace? When we relate the two questions, the answer to the two questions, is it also termed as peace? You made me realize that the first one is not actually a peace. Definition to the peace? But the second one, I think, would be where peace reigns. With that one.
I think that the answer goes into the direction, the following direction. No?
Okay.
Paul Ricoeur, a French philosopher, I'm very fond of him, once said that all the good things are usually forgotten because they're taken for granted, and peace is among them. No? That peace, once you have it, you don't know you have it because you forgot that you have something good, and you become.
Yeah, I can see that.
That peace is an outcome, and it's a social practice. It's a sort of social orders and a standard expectation of behavior. As such, it easily get forgotten by a population. A population is used to have peace, and it forgets that it has peace, so that it can dreams with violence. No? It's especially clear in the US. No? It's a population that lives mainly in the expectation of peace. No, the people don't carry out every now and then violent crimes. However, it's a society that dreams with violence, so that half the population has a gun. No, and follows fantasia of resolving conflict through violence. And obviously, slowly it creates an erosion of peace because people are dreaming of violence. It's very, 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 very interesting phenomenon. So that once you get a peaceful situation, people forget that the value of what they have and begin to dream about the easiness, the attraction of violence. Because obviously, to resolve a conflict with your neighbor through a legal system and is costly. It's frustrating frequently, and it takes time, and it doesn't goes always your way. No? So the dream of violence, the temptation of violence, is the efficiency of resolution brought by violence. I take my gun and I kill the other. That's the resolution of the problem I have with my neighbor. But obviously, this dream carries with itself the short-sightedness of violence, and obviously the decay of our possibility to cooperate. And I think the temptation of violence become ever greater when you live in societies in which you have peace. So beware this temptation, and this temptation, I see this temptation in the whole peaceful Western world, in Switzerland, in the US, in the UK, etc. You have population dreaming of violence in peaceful. I don't know about China, but with the Western states, I know it's true. I have people, my generation dreams with violence. It's very, very strange, very strange.
Thank you so much, Matthias. Now we turn to Mary. Mary, please, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I really like your your class, very interesting. And a couple of days in Beijing, we have a cultural exchange about dance. And many different countries, we are together dancing very, very in peace, and I feel very comfortable. But I have a question is, in Bible Genesis, Genesis 4, Cain killed his brother Abel. I think the sin is settled down in the human being's DNA. how to make in peace among the human being longer. You know, I am a dancer. I'm a unit called CID. Sometimes I do some exchange art all over the world, but you know it's difficult because people like dance, but after they maybe find some financial, some different problem, they think they maybe find each other. Please tell me how to make in peace among the people, because DNA is fighting.
Okay, you're asking for a deep roots, no, of the willingness, no, to grasp for violence, and how to engage other people into refusing this. Well, we are human beings, no, Mary. We are. There is a freedom, no, and people choose no violence. They are seduced by violence. You mentioned obviously the Genesis. Remember, there is a seduction, a seduction at the beginning of the Genesis, the seduction of being like gods by eating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge between the good and the evil. The seduction of violence is, I think, very powerful because it gives the illusion that you can think your way, that is, in the way of my interest, quickly. And it appeals to many people, especially in conflicts. When you have a difficult situation with a person, you want your case, your interest to be heard and to win. This is the seduction of violence, to grasp for whatever will oblige the other person to go my way. What can we do against this seduction of violence? I think you can argue. First, it's not really efficient. It's on the short term. It's efficiency on the short term, and it's an efficiency that comes at the cost of the other. I destroy the other. I wound the other. This destruction of the other is part of the violence in itself. It's not physical destruction. It can be a moral destruction, spiritual destruction. It's in any way some sort of submission of the other to my will. This is a condition of the efficiency, which is very bad indeed. And so it's something that destroy rather than construct something. So it's a root of destruction. What can we oppose, to this seduction of violence? What we should oppose, is the long term, is the fact that I can't be a human if the other is not treated as a human being. Because something of my own humanity is wounded in the humanity of the other whenever I grasp for violence, whenever I impose my will on another person violently without his free will to accede to it, then I'm wounding my own humanity. I'm not more powerful once I've submitted the other. I'm less powerful because I'm losing his willingness to cooperate with me. And I will have to engage in more violence in order to bring more not something that creates community. It's something that destroys community. That's why I stress the will of communality, of the common goods, to be at the root of peace. I'm not sure that I've given a very satisfactory answer, Mary. This would be the way I give an answer.
Yes, I have.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
the last one. You know, my mom, my dad is also Christian in China. Very young, my parents tell me it's only God. And sometimes working in the units called CID, I exchange culture. I do something different culture. It's like the UN, the UNESCO said the diversity. But I something is good diversity or is wrong diversity because only one God is not a lot of gods. You know, I totally sometimes confused. No, is diversity is good or bad? I just want to know this.
So maybe as Matthias, you are thinking of that, if I can give also a chance to Ngapemba, then you can answer everything together, as I can see that we are running out of time. And I can also see a question in chat from Bite Sam that Professor Matthias, how do you relate your peace perception of common goods to the laws of dialectics? I hope that Bita is there, so in case this is not too clear, she can explain it. Can we turn to you, Ngapemba? Welcome. Ngapemba, do you hear me? Maybe you can try. Oh.